Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about navigating the difficult relationship. From simple disagreements to emotionally abusive behaviors, you deserve respect and kindness. All the information on this show is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being, and always pick your battles wisely. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. I receive a lot of messages from people in very challenging situations, and sometimes it's hard to direct you if you're in that situation, or direct anyone that reaches out to me and asks a question like, I'm completely stuck. If they ask a question where they are in a situation that they're completely stuck, they can't go anywhere. They are in like a relationship that they have no means to be independent, no means to get out of it if they want to, and feel powerless, feel out of control of their own life. And there are limited options sometimes. Sometimes you are limited in your options. And so what can somebody like me or anybody that you talk to or listen to or watch or read, anything out there, any kind of resource, what are the magic words that you need to hear? What do you need to hear for you to take the next right step for you? And I do my best. I come on the air and I do my best to help you through these powerless places when you're in a powerless place. One of the messages that I received is a person in a powerless place, at least from their perspective and from what they conveyed to me. This person's been in an emotionally abusive relationship for the last 2 decades. I know a lot of people listening now can relate to that. And they actually separated for a while. And suddenly, she said, her husband realized how badly he was treating her. And this happens a lot. In fact, 98% of the time, if the emotionally abusive person has the ability to change, when they have the ability to change, when they have the ability to experience empathy, 98% of the time it activates in them at the point of the breakup, or the point that the other person has had enough, what I call their threshold. When the victim of emotional abuse has reached their final straw, that is when they say, no more. I will not take it anymore. I will not take your behavior anymore. And sometimes they say, you need to change or else, or use similar wording. Or they'll just say, I'm leaving. I can't take it. And I'm not going to expose myself to this kind of behavior anymore. And sometimes it takes a while to get there. Some people take longer than others, and some people don't. Some people go into a relationship and they start to see these orange or red flags, and they say, this is not happening. I will not tolerate this in my relationship. So I'm not going to go any further with you. Now, if you have the capability of changing, this is the abuse victim talking to the perpetrator of this hurtful behavior. If you have the capacity to change, the ability to change, now's the time. If they said that, and that person had the ability to change, it might go somewhere. It could improve. It might improve. It perhaps will improve. But that's because the victim of the abusive behavior has reached that threshold. They have reached a point where they are not going to take any more. And there's a fine line between powerless and powerful. And some people have to reach the point of powerless that they feel like, if I allow this anymore, I'm going to lose so much power that I'll lose myself. I'm going to lose who I am completely. This is why it's often expressed to me and many others that are in this field that after many years of abusive behavior, They feel like a shell of their former self. It's the disintegration from the inside out. It's emotional abuse. They are abusing your emotional state. Your emotions are being turned against you. They are being twisted, and you're being made to feel responsible and guilty and feel bad for being yourself. You should never, ever feel bad for being who you are. And if anyone convinces you that you are a bad person because of who you are, they're not the right person. They may become the right person one day, and maybe not for you, but someone else. But right now, if you're not supported for who you are, the person you are deep inside, the person that you were probably expressing to the world before you got into a relationship with a hurtful person, if you are not allowed to be in the relationship, but only a molded form of yourself is allowed to be in that relationship, then you will slowly disintegrate from the inside out. And I know there are so many people listening right now that has already happened to. The person who wrote to me said that they've been in an emotionally abusive relationship for 23 years. He separated for a while and he finally got it. He finally said, "I've realized how poorly I'd been treating you. I'm so sorry." And now he seems to be trying to improve things. And I'm reading the letter here. And we've been through these cycles of hoovering in the past. In case you've never heard that term, it's when they lure or suck you back in like a vacuum because they say all the right things that you want to hear. Please come back. I promise I'll change. Those are words, not actions. Change is noticeable. Change is real. When someone changes, meaning when they heal from being the emotional abuser, you notice something completely different about them. And it's not typically in their words, it's in their behaviors. Because they can say anything they want. An emotionally abusive person can say anything they want and anything that they know you want to hear. I remember being this person. I remember being the person who said, "I promise I'm working on it. Yes, I'm doing everything I can to stop being so judgmental and stop being critical." And that was me. And those words, I honestly meant them. I meant them like an addict means they will stop doing what they are addicted to. And that's not to put down anyone who has an addiction or anyone who really does stop their addiction and not do it again. I'm talking about the addict that feels so compelled to go back to whatever they were doing. And with emotional abusers, it's usually going back to their old coping mechanisms. That's what I did. I went back to my old coping mechanisms, which were unhealthy behaviors that I learned a long time ago and never unlearned. I never replaced the unhealthy ways I coped. For example, as a child, I coped by being silent, by hiding myself, by secluding myself, by shutting my mouth. I coped with the sometimes aggressive violence in my home. I'd never experienced physical violence, but I was scared as hell. And my stepfather was an alcoholic, and he would have these fits of rage, and my siblings and I would hide. And so I learned to shut up. And I learned to never show my anger. So I became a very covert, manipulative person because I had no idea how to cope with real challenges in life. I was never taught good boundaries. I was never taught how to treat other people in a relationship because my only role models were an aggressive, violent alcoholic and a people-pleasing, boundaryless mom. And I'm not putting her down for that. That's just what happens in these abusive relationships. There's the aggressive one or the manipulative or controlling one or all three. And then there's someone who is trying to figure out how to work with this person and please them and try not to incite aggressive behavior or manipulative behavior. They're trying everything they can to make the relationship work. And it never does when the other person won't change, especially when the abusive person refuses to see that what they're doing is bad, is hurtful, is abusive. If they refuse to look at it and accept that they're doing bad behavior, then their entire perspective is that you're the problem. If they don't look inward, if they don't reflect, then you're the problem. That's how they see it. You're the problem. And so there are so many people out there that are the abusive person, they are the hurtful one, that refuse to look inward, because in order to do that, in order to look inward and accept that they're hurtful or abusive, they also have to accept that they're wrong about life, about their beliefs. And they also have to go even deeper than that, which is not always conscious, and accept that they may expose themselves to a dangerous situation and not know how to deal with it. That is in there in a lot of abusive people. They may expose themselves to a dangerous situation. And what that means is, because abusive behavior often stems from terrible or unhealthy coping mechanisms, in order to stop being abusive, they also have to heal those coping mechanisms, which exposes them to perceived danger, because they don't know a world without their own coping mechanisms. If their coping mechanisms, especially like me, if my coping mechanism was to be quiet, withdraw, and disconnect, then if I were to not do that behavior, the way I cope with a challenge, and the challenge might be an argument. We're in an argument. I don't want to talk anymore. I'm going to hide myself. I'm going to withdraw. Or you're doing something that I don't like, so I'm going to make you feel guilty, and I'm also going to withdraw love and connection, the old toxic silent treatment. If I were to handle that with more maturity, especially emotional maturity, then I would not go to that coping mechanism. But I don't know any other way. As the emotional abuser in a situation like that, they don't know any other way. They only know how to cope the way they learned a long time ago. And so to remove that coping mechanism is to expose themselves to a vulnerability. To be that vulnerable is so scary to a lot of them. I mean, some people do this consciously. Some people will hurt you consciously, and they know it, and they keep doing it. And I'm not necessarily talking about them, but they do exist. There are conscious manipulators and controllers, and unconscious manipulators and controllers. And the conscious ones, they're dangerous because they know they're hurting you and they don't care. They're more dangerous. I'm not saying they can't change. I'm just saying, well, let me put it this way. If they're conscious and they haven't changed, if they know they're hurting you and they haven't changed, there's less of a chance that they will. I'm not saying they can't, but there's less of a chance. The unconscious controllers or the manipulators are the ones that are relying on these old coping mechanisms and don't dare to let those go. They don't dare to enter a challenge without doing one of their coping mechanisms, which usually leads to emotionally abusive behavior. So again, my coping mechanism was, at least one of them was the silent treatment, and then guilting the person that I was with so that they would eventually do what I want, which never worked. I thought it would work, but it never did. It only made things worse all the time. And if you've never heard me talk about this, I was an emotionally abusive person for many of my relationships. It took many breakups and a divorce to finally realize it, to finally become conscious of my behavior. And when I did, I was disgusted in myself. I was sick. I almost felt like vomiting. I was so disgusted in my behaviors. I didn't know until I knew. And this is what can happen sometimes, is that the abusive person can suddenly realize that they are being hurtful to someone that they're supposed to be supportive and loving toward. And they'll ask themselves, why didn't I do this before? Why didn't I stop so long ago? I could have made this a great relationship, and I ruined every single day we were together. I feel so terrible about it. These are the ones that discover that they have been wrong the whole time. So there are those out there that are still doing unconscious manipulation and control because they're relying on old coping mechanisms from childhood, and because they haven't replaced them, because they haven't figured out how to deal with challenges healthily and effectively, they're still relying on old behaviors because they honestly believe that's how you're supposed to act. Which is why I always tell you to ask the question, do you realize what you're doing or saying is hurting me? That is such an important question. Not because you have to make them realize or have to coach them or anything like that. It's not about that. It's just asking the question for your benefit, for your knowledge. You need to know if they realize they're hurting you. That's my perspective, my opinion. You need to know if they know. Some people will say, of course they know. Of course they know they're hurting me. How could they not know? I hear you. I hear that. I hear that sentiment. I hear those words. And I say, I agree. How could they not know? And my reason, the reason I didn't know, is because for all those years I believed I was right. And no matter what they did, if they cried in front of me, I couldn't believe that I made that happen. This is how ignorant I was and how ignorant a lot of these people are. Again, these are the unconscious ones. I couldn't believe that I made that happen. That wasn't my fault. My thinking back then was, no, that's their fault. Because if they only did what I said, then we'd both be happy. Which is very toxic thinking. But that's the way I thought, and the way a lot of emotionally abusive people think, is that they believe that they're right. And if the other person would only do what they were told to do, then we'd both be happy. And then when I was married, when my wife and I separated for a while, I had some time to myself, and I really reflected. It was the first time I reflected on what possibly could I be doing to cause her to be unhappy, because she was losing her passion for life. She was becoming more and more what appeared to be depressed. And I thought, well, maybe it's not her. Maybe it's something I'm doing. And I don't know where that thought came from, but I decided to explore it. And when I explored it, I think I asked myself the question, if there was something that I was doing, what would it be? Something like that. If there was something that I was doing to cause her to lose her passion and become more depressed, what would that be? And so that was the moment I decided to practice empathy. And it's not that I wasn't completely unempathetic before. It was just I never practiced it being her with me as her partner. I never practiced what it was like to be her. And I did. I practiced it, and I said, okay, how would it feel if I was judged for the food that I put in my mouth? Because that was one of my issues. How would I feel if somebody or she looked at me like the way I look at her? How would I feel if she said the things to me and withdrew love and connection from me and made me feel guilty for doing what I would consider perfectly normal things as a human being to do? I was asking myself these questions, reflecting on these questions, and boy, did that hit me hard. Because for the first time, I felt unloved and unworthy. I felt her pain. I felt her suffering. I felt like I was so alone in a relationship with somebody who was supposed to make me feel on top of the world. I felt sick that I was treating this person, for the first time I was experiencing what it was like to be her. And that was the day I started healing, because I couldn't be that person anymore. Once I realized I was hurting her, then again, there's no excuse. I was hurting her for a good 8 years, and I just didn't see it. I didn't understand it, and I didn't believe it. And then when we were separated and I realized, boy, we could lose this relationship, let me reflect on this stuff, I finally got it. And like I was saying, when the emotionally abusive person changes, it is very noticeable. because when she came back to the relationship, she noticed that I was different. And I think she even said, there's something different about you, and it's really weird. It's really strange seeing you like this. And I said, I don't know what you mean. And she said, you're just different. And that really highlighted that I stumbled onto something. I stumbled onto a path out of my terrible coping mechanisms and my emotionally abusive behavior, at least the first step. I had a long way to go, but that was the first step to realization that I needed to change. And I needed to change a lot of things because my entire life was based on how I coped with challenges. If things were going great, you never saw the bad side of me. But as soon as things didn't go my way, and this happens in a lot of abusive relationships, as soon as things don't go the abuser's way, things get very difficult. And they are relying on these old coping mechanisms, strategies that no longer apply to their adult life. They might have applied when they were a child trying to cope. And if they were never taught any other way to cope with challenges, those childhood coping mechanisms can turn into emotionally abusive behavior in adult relationships. So that's what happened to me. That's what's happened to, I'm going to say millions of people, because they get into these relationships and they mistreat the people that they're with, and the other person can't figure out what they're doing wrong. So they try harder and they try harder. And again, some people won't try. They'll say, no way. They'll notice the red flags and say, no more, change or I'm out. And this comes back to the threshold. I've had enough. Some people's threshold is 3 months. Some people have a 40-year threshold. My mom, a 40-year threshold, and it might have continued if he didn't leave her. I never want you to be so tolerant of bad behavior that you continue to expose yourself to something that you don't deserve. You don't deserve that behavior, and you shouldn't have to try. You shouldn't have to try at least so hard to please someone that is unpleasable. And all you have to do is look at the results. What are your results from trying? I try and they always get more upset later, or I try and they're happy for a day and then they get upset again, or I do something wrong, or they say I said something stupid, or on and on. And you shouldn't have to try to be something that you're not just so someone else can be happy. You should not put yourself in that position. And if you're in that position, then I'm here to remind you that you don't want to wear your power down so much that you have nothing left. And sometimes that needs to happen. Sometimes you need to be pushed to the ledge where you're practically falling off, but typical abusive behavior will have that person push you over the ledge but grab your arm right before you fall. That is, it's actually a trauma bond. They push you to the edge, the ledge, and they're about to push you off, and you're in the fear and panic, and then they pull you back. And that's very reminiscent of what a trauma bond is that you get pushed in this one direction of hurt and pain and suffering, and then you're pulled back and loved and shown how worthy you are and how important you are. And it's a pull and push cycle that confuses your heart and your brain to make you think that love only comes with abuse. Hence the show name. This is exactly why I called this podcast Love and Abuse, is because you are being pushed and pulled, pushed away to suffer and pulled in to feel love and connection. And those get intertwined in your brain, and you think you can't have one without the other. And then when the relationship ends, you are longing for that connection that they continue to show you after they hurt you. And it's a rewiring in your brain. And what needs to happen is a deprogramming of sorts. And that can happen typically after there's full disconnect, a full separation, or you're not together anymore, you're not talking anymore. it usually can start to happen. At least the fog can start to lift between 2 and 4 months, but sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes you have been pushed and pulled so much that you are stuck in this cycle. It's like hiccups. At least for me, when I've had hiccups, I have like 10, 20, 30 hiccups, and I'm trying everything. I'm holding my breath. I'm doing whatever I can to get rid of them. But every hiccup, I expect the next one. It's like my body is preparing for it. I can feel it. And so the next one comes, and okay, that was the next step in the cycle. I had a hiccup. And so I'm waiting for the next one, and the next one comes. But then the next one doesn't come, but my body is still preparing for it. My mind and body think that the next hiccup is coming. And that's the kind of push and pull cycle of a trauma bond. It's like you've suffered and you've had this pain, and all you're looking for is that love and connection. And it's almost unconscious, like you know it's coming. You know it's coming, and you want it so bad. And when you finally get some sort of feeling of worthiness and feeling of being loved, then you are fulfilling that cycle. And I'm not blaming you for that. It's just what happens. We fill this cycle by expecting and desiring the next step. And we don't want to be in the bad part. I don't want the next hiccup. I want that relief. I'm hoping that relief comes. I'm not calling hiccups a trauma bond, but it's sort of the same feeling, or at least, again, the way I experience it. Maybe you don't experience hiccups like that, but you get the idea. It's just the push and pull. You expect each one as you go through it, and then suddenly that is your life. You're expecting the next step of the cycle. And so that it can really mess with our heart and our head. If we expect something next, whether it's good or bad, that expectation becomes a part of us, and it takes a while to, again, deprogram that. How do I deprogram that? I have to get away from the person doing the trauma bond. I have to get away from that. I have to get away from their behaviors. And while away from their behaviors, I've got to reconnect with myself and reground and figure out who I am, because who I've been for all these months or years has been defined by them. They've redefined who I am, and I've become someone I'm not. And I've got to find myself again. You may be there now. You may have to go through that process. And a lot of people have gone through that process before you. A lot of people have gone through this. That means you can do it too. If you're in that space, you're not sure if you're going to get out of this relationship, or you need to tell the other person, do you realize what you're doing is hurting me, so that you can find out if they're conscious of their behavior or not, then that will give you enough to work with to start to make the next right decision for you. And for those of you who haven't heard me ask that question before, there's a follow-up, because you might get the answer, no, I don't realize it's hurting you, or they may try to invalidate you. I'm not hurting you. I'm not doing those things to you. They may say something like that. Your follow-up is, well, yes, it does hurt me. I'm telling you right now, it hurts me. Whether you believe it or not, it does hurt me. And now that you know, I'm telling you that it's hurting me. Now that you know, will you stop? And if they refuse to stop, or they try to deflect or go somewhere else or blame you, they're not going to. And that has to be something that you absorb, something you soak in, that they're not going to stop, so that you know where you stand. If they refuse to stop, then you know where you stand with them. And sometimes that can be painful, or probably every time it can be painful. It can be very painful to be with someone or to be around someone who knows they're hurting you, and they refuse to stop hurting you. Or they are not willing to look inward. They're not willing to reflect on their own behaviors and at least make an effort. So let me get back to this person's message, who basically says, I realize that I'm autistic. I have something called alexithymia, something like that. And as you can imagine, trying to both recover from this and assess whether and how this relationship can continue is exponentially harder when the victim is already poorly in touch with their own emotions and needs, which is where I am? Is there anything that can help victims with these conditions, in addition to the fog of years or decades of abuse and the disconnect with our own needs and feelings that it brings? Talk about a hard question. She's having trouble even connecting with herself as far as emotions are concerned. And I don't have an answer with those specific conditions, but I do have a very important piece of information that you need to have, that you need to consider. And it's this: if you're dealing with challenges in your own life, personal challenges, whether they're physical or mental health, whatever you're dealing with, anything on top of that has to either support it or be neutral, but not be demanding or stressful or invasive. Anything on top of your own personal challenges will introduce more challenge to the point where you may not be able to deal with and heal yourself, because you are dealing with a lot, and you need someone that can be either neutral and allow you to deal with those challenges, at minimum neutral, at above minimum supportive and loving and helpful. Supportive and helpful, kind of in the same line of thought, but it would be nice to, if you have challenges, to have someone that can not only be there to support you while you're going through your challenges, but maybe even offer help. And that doesn't even mean you need to accept the help. You might say, these are my challenges, I have to deal with them. And that's okay, that's great. Somebody can say, okay, if you need me, I'll be here for you. That's a healthy relationship, and it's not putting undue stress, no demand, no invasion of your thoughts and your feelings, and you're dealing with your own health. If you are dealing with your personal challenges, if you're not in a relationship yet, do not introduce somebody that isn't supportive and loving and maybe even helpful to an already existing situation. Because what ends up happening is that you will be overwhelmed by all the stress and inability to deal with everything that's going on, that you will not be able to attend to yourself. And so if you're not in a relationship like that yet, do not introduce somebody that can't be supportive, that can't be at least neutral about it. And what I mean by neutral is they stand back and say, hey, you have a challenge, okay, you deal with it, and I'll just stay out of the way. It would be nice if they were more supportive, but if at least they're not making it more challenging for you, great. But yes, if you can find at a minimum somebody who just stays out of your way so you can deal with your own challenges and you are okay with that, great. If you can find somebody who is supportive, saying, hey, I will help you if you need me, just let me know, great, even better. If you can find somebody that says, not only will I help you, I want to make sure you're comfortable and maybe we can find a solution to this, even better. But if you're with somebody that is making your life harder and causing you to be inattentive to your own needs, that's when you're in a very toxic situation that will only get worse and cause you not to be able to address what you need to address within you. Hopefully you find someone that is empathetic to your needs. But if you don't, if you're in a situation like this person is, and this is the other side of this, she's already in a situation where this person is invasive and adding more stress and more demand on her very limited energy supply. She has limited energy, and how do you deal with your own needs when you need a lot or most of your energy, if you have to then use that limited energy trying to keep a relationship together or trying to keep someone else happy? It's almost impossible. And this is my answer to this person. And again, this is a very hard one. I don't have the magic pill answer for you, but I will say this: by having this other person in your life, that is not supportive and not giving you the space you need and adding to your energy, then you will not be able to heal yourself in the way you need to heal. I'm not saying you need to break up or get a divorce or whatever. That is a personal choice that you have to make. And I never push anybody in any direction. I just want to empower you with the information that you need to make the right decision for you. And that information is, if you stay in this relationship and you give your limited amount of energy away to someone, especially someone who can't ever be satisfied and nothing you ever do is good enough or right enough or whatever, if you are giving away that limited amount of energy, then you will not have enough for yourself. So being in this situation is detrimental to your health. And I'm telling you all this so that you'll understand maybe where all your energy is going and why you don't feel like you're getting any better, or why you can't figure out how to deal with your own issues when you have all these other issues in your life, because you're saying you're trying to recover from this and you're trying to assess whether and how this relationship can continue with you already being poorly in touch with your own emotions and needs. It's near impossible to do it with somebody who is stressful, demanding, invasive. Basically, and I hate to use this term because I don't like to throw anyone under the bus. I believe everyone has an opportunity to heal and grow and change who they are. But some people do act like a parasite. Some people do drain you. And while you're being drained, while your energy is going toward that parasite, it's being taken away from you. And it is very difficult to heal when your limited energy is being spent or wasted on something that will never improve. I mean, you really do have to look at your results. Has this improved when I put energy into it? If it hasn't, then it's going in the wrong direction. Sometimes we need to take that back. And my whole point to this person who wrote is that it's very difficult to heal yourself and deal with things when you are putting all your energy into a relationship that is only more demanding on your system and your spirit. When your spirit is being drained like that, it's hard to find the resources. It's hard to find your own energy to do the healing that you need to do. And that's my response to you, the person who wrote. That's my response, is that you will have the energy and the knowledge and the know-how once that fog lifts. And that fog may not be able to lift until you stop putting energy into the wrong place. Because right now you are being weakened, W-E-A-K, weakened. Over time, it gets worse and worse, and you feel more and more weak. And maybe you will reach a point where you say, no more. But you are already in a, I don't want to say weakened state, but you're in a limited state. Your limited amount of energy needs to go towards you. And if you're not getting somebody to help compound that energy in you, to support you, to love you, or even help you, if you're not with somebody who's not doing that and helping you compound the energy that you need for yourself, you'll never have enough for someone else. And when somebody is in your life taking away that limited energy that you have, that you need for yourself, then I'm really sorry to say that it's just going to continue to be difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it will be very difficult, and you may not have enough energy to continue stretching that energy out to other places and other people when you need it for yourself. A healthy person compounds your energy and gives you an abundance of it so that you can have enough for both of you. That's my words to you. I wish you the best with this, and I wish you much strength and healing through this. Thanks for tuning in today, and share this with others who might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. The workbook helps you pinpoint exactly what's going on in your relationship, outlining the behaviors causing you to leave so many interactions feeling bad. Take the assessment in the workbook and gain clarity on what your next best steps are. If you've discovered that you are doing hurtful behaviors to someone you care about and you'd like to change that about yourself, sign up for the Healed Being program over at healedbeing.com. You can take the course on your own, at your own pace, or join the optional private online group where I and others will give you direct support. It's time to stop making those you love feel bad. That's healedbeing.com. If you're looking for a safer way to listen to this show where all the titles to the episodes are changed, click on the Safe Listening button on the podcast page over at loveandabuse.com. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant, because you are. We'll talk again soon.